Welcome to Rates and Barrels, presented by E-Trade from Morgan Stanley. Derek VanRiper, Jed Lowrie here with you. It is Wednesday, July 9th. On this episode, we are going to discuss some struggling young hitters. Young as in like under 26 was the cutoff. Some guys that we think could still have very bright futures despite 2025s that haven't gone well, or even multi-year stretches that haven't gone quite to script. Got a few baseball news items to talk about today, including one of the most unusual endings to a game I've ever seen. I mean, let's just go right into that. If you're watching on YouTube, you can actually check this one out here as we go. But the quick setup here, the Phillies visiting the Giants. And Oracle Park, I didn't realize, has been a house of horrors for the Phillies lately. I think they've lost 18 of their last 21 in San Francisco, according to Matt Gelb. I mean, that's a remarkably rough stretch.
Yeah.
And they're up 3-1 in the ninth inning. Jordan Romano trying to close it out. There's one out. Patrick Bailey's up, 2 runners on base. This is a pretty good spot if you're a Phillies fan. You're sitting there, you're like, yeah, we got this. Everything's good. Jordan Romano hasn't been great, but Patrick Bailey's having a down year. He's going to get through this, no problem. And then this happens. Now, off the bat, you think this is going to be a home run because it was crushed. It's the top of the wall, the top of that right field, that right center brick wall at Oracle. And then it does a classic cart path roll all the way down the warning track towards left field. And Patrick Bailey clears the bases with a walk-off inside the park home run. I mean, Jed, you've seen some things on a baseball diamond. Have you seen a game end quite like that before?
I have not, and we were just talking before we hit record, and that was the first time I had seen it. I read the headline, I heard about it, but that was the first time I saw it. I was driving back home when it happened, and I can only imagine what that feeling was, and for the fans too, right? Because obviously you have this hard hit ball, everybody thinks it's a homer. There's like a little bit of disappointment there just for a half second, and then the ball caroms 200 feet to the left, gets past Marsh, and then they're, off to the races. Bailey's off to the races. And you can see, guys jumping out of the dugout, waving their arms. The fans are going nuts. I mean, that is just pure baseball entertainment right there.
Yeah, it's all you can ask for at a night for a night at the yard, and
truly,
I mean, a good moment for Bailey too. We talked about how difficult it's been for him at the plate this year, and just this Giants team trying to stay in the thick of the NL wildcard race. So a really big win for them. Producer Brian Smith dropping a note here. The first day, yesterday, Tuesday, was the first day in Major League history to feature both a leadoff inside the park home run. Lawrence Butler did it for the A's, and a walk-off inside the park home run for Patrick Bailey. That is some bizarro stuff happening in the baseball world.
And like I said, just that's just entertaining. Like people want to see guys run. They want to see athletic plays. They want to see things like this. And so, to hear that too, first day in MLB history, to have a leadoff inside the Parker. And I mean, baseball never stops, never ceases to amaze you, where you think you've seen it all, and there's always something else.
Yeah. Well said. That ball would have been a home run in all 29 parks other than Oracle in the big leagues.
Yeah.
As
it sure looked like it.
He crushed it. It was the spot designed for chaos. That's exactly what happened. It was like when they designed that ballpark, that was the moment they were trying to create, and it came to life. So good stuff all around there. I wanted to ask you, so Manny Machado got to 2,000 hits on Monday, and he's young enough where the path to 3,000 certainly makes sense. The skill set is one where he puts a ton of balls in play. Great hitter. It almost seems like a question of health. My grandma always used to say the first 2,000 hits are the easiest 2,000 hits. Those last 1,000 hits that you really got to worry about. And I had to worry about just even getting onto a team. So, my problems were even greater than that. But what do you think the odds are of Manny Machado actually getting to 3,000? He had a lot of major injuries early in his career, but he's been mostly healthy throughout his time in San Diego, especially. There's only 4 active players that have more hits than Manny Machado does right now, which makes me realize how unlikely it actually is to get that last third of your career to kind of fall into place.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's I love the skill set. I mean, if there's anybody who could do it, maybe outside of Altuve, who's sitting at 2,300 hits at 35 years old. Manny's probably the guy, but that's going to be a long haul. I mean, you're talking about, essentially 7 more years of 150 hits. Like I said, I think if anybody can do it outside of Altuve, it's probably Manny. But to your point, it's all health dependent. I think if he does stay healthy, and gets a everyday opportunity, later in his career, I think it's possible. But to your you said your grandma,
yeah,
your point, the last 1,000 are going to be the hardest. Yeah, and especially as these aging trends in baseball affect opportunities for older players more and more. That's why I kind of point to the potential of him not getting an everyday opportunity later in his career.
Yeah, the long-term deal he signed with the Padres runs through the year 2033, which sounds like a made-up year, but is creeping up on us here. So
yeah, right.
I don't know if it'll all be in San Diego. I mean, if he wants to leave at some point, they could trade him. Obviously, there's a way for that to happen. But yeah, 999 to go for Manny Machado. He got another one after getting number 2,000. And Freddie Freeman, Jose Altuve, Andrew McCutchen, Paul Goldschmidt are the 4 players who have more hits, 4 active players with more hits. Freeman, I was surprised with this number, Jed. 2358 for Freddie Freeman. I would have given him like 500 more in my head. I would have thought maybe there's a shot he was going to get 3,000 like next year.
Yeah, no, and for the guy that's got a career 3, is he? Yeah, he's at career 300 exactly, and 2,300 hits, and he's 35 years old. I just the idea of playing into your even 40s at this point, there's fewer guys doing it. It'll probably become even more rare as we move forward. And Freddie's a high hit guy, but topping out at, let's see, well, he did top out at 211 hits in 2023. But that's you're talking about 162 game average of 181 hits. That's still a lot of work to do as a 35-year-old to get to 3,000. If Freddie's another guy, actually, as we talk this through at 2,300, where he could get there just because of the volume.
Yeah, I mean, 35 years old, still could see him playing into like, I don't know, early 40s is possible based on how he's aging so far. But the hit tool is just so good. It would be
so good.
It would be unsurprising to me if he found a way there, even though he's still got 600 plus to go as we sit here on July 9th. Couple other news items to get to, kind of flyby type stuff. Apparently, Alex Bregman could return before the All-Star break this weekend, so some good news on that front if you're looking to get him back into a lineup. Certainly the Red Sox are. Hunter Green was scratched from a rehab start this week, Jed. MRI on his groin showed no significant damage, but there was some tightness that caused him to be scratched. And I think with Green, it's just like, it's an absolute like max effort sort of approach. And I think if something feels even just a little bit wrong, it's probably right of him to flag it, because it doesn't seem like it takes much for him to aggravate a problem like that.
Well, to your point, right? When you're going 100% and there's any sort of tightness or discomfort, you're just asking for something to get worse. And this is, and especially when you're being judged and you're being graded and you're being evaluated on, the spin rate, the swing and miss, all these things that, kind of force the player's hand to pitch at that 100% level. There's really the incentive to go out there at 80%, continues to drop because it doesn't reward you in the end, at the end of the day.
And knowing, with the kinetic chain, like if you have something wrong, even in your lower half, you can create some problems for your upper half. You can cause a shoulder or an elbow problem if your mechanics aren't right. So I totally understand the reluctance to push through something like that Fortunately, we didn't see any structural damage in the MRI that Hunter Green had. We're going to break down Tyler Glasnow's return. That's going to happen Wednesday afternoon. So probably by the time you get to hear this podcast, he will have returned against the Brewers. We'll talk about that with Trevor on Thursday's episode. I did see a note. The Braves decided to option Didier Fuentes back to AAA. Some of the options you're going to see this time of year are just to manage the roster to get an extra bullpen arm. But I think Fuentes' struggles getting really aggressively moved to the big leagues probably merited that demotion more so than roster gymnastics in this case. So we'll see what they do trying to line up that rotation coming out of the All-Star break. So one prospect promotion, JJ Wetherholt's going to be bumped up to AAA, and he's going to play some second base, a little bit of shortstop, and some third base as well, which that last part's kind of surprising because we don't know if the Cardinals are going to find a trade fit with Nolan Arenado in the next few weeks. I think the shortstop thing is probably it's a fallback in case Mason Wynn gets hurt. I think the more likely long-term home for JJ Wetherholt in a world in which Nolan Arenado is still a Cardinal is probably second base. But I wanted to ask you about this because we had a Discord question regarding Jazz Chisholm. What kind of impact does it have on you as a player when you are moving around day to day? Maybe you've got one spot you played most of your career. Wetherholt was a shortstop coming out of West Virginia. You moved around the infield. Like, what does that do to your preparation?
Yeah, I mean, it creates a little uncertainty. I think, baseball is such a routine-oriented game that when you find a guy who can defensively play multiple positions and do it naturally without having to take a ton of reps to feel comfortable doing it, there's a ton of value in a guy that can still produce offensively and play multiple positions. And, I came up when I was coming up, the Red Sox were starting to, think of me as, a little bit more of a utility guy. And I was at the time, this is like pre-Ben Zobrist, big, like utility guys getting paid and really valued. Like that's where the utility guy really in a previous generation was like the guy that wasn't good enough to play every day. And so I think that narrative has changed. Guys are rewarded now for playing multiple positions because they do add a ton of value. So I think, if JJ has the ability to move around and, help the club, especially as a young player, you're going to come up and really do whatever it takes to help the team win because you'd rather be in the big leagues, quite frankly. But I would say, generally speaking, anybody who plays the same position every single day, you're more on cruise control on defense where, you're not thinking, and every instinct is a little bit different. It's like, oh, short and third is the same thing, but the instincts are different, right? Like, you're when the ball's hit to your left, like, the way your footwork works, it's not as simple as just showing up and standing in a position. There are some instinctual things that, just a matter of repetition.
Yeah, and the question we had in Discord was about Jazz Chisholm specifically, since the Yankees made that move for him last year, played him at third base, which he hadn't played before. Now they're playing him over at second, and it was basically like, is this causing any sort of problems at the plate? I think it probably varies from player to player, right? And if you played the position before, if you're moving back to something that might be more familiar, is it as simple as saying, well, it's like riding a bike? Like, you get more comfortable there faster because you have done it before. It's not like the move to third for Jazz was probably the biggest leap of all. Moving him back to second base shouldn't be as difficult.
Agreed. And I came up through the minor leagues as a shortstop. I was drafted as a second baseman. There was really no path for me with Dustin Pedroia doing what he was doing. And so, then I got called up because Mike Lowell got hurt. And so I started playing a little bit of third, but I played third a couple times in college, but a couple times in the minor leagues. But I was out of third base in my major league debut, just pure instinct. Just reactive, right? Like, it was there was no there was no nuance to my game at third, and I got more repetitions there and played a decent third base. But my natural position was always second. And so, when you do move around like that, I think I said this on the podcast. If it wasn't last week, it was the week before. Like, Jazz looks like a second baseman to me. And I think offensively, I'm guessing offensively, he's a more productive player as a second baseman because, the arm strength and some of the footwork at third, he looks a little bit stretched there. I'm not saying he can't do it at the major league level. I'm just saying at second base, he looks like a second baseman. He moves like a second baseman. I think that will free him up both physically and mentally on the offensive side.
Yeah, I think when he was coming up as a prospect in Arizona's system, he was a shortstop, got flipped in that Zach Gallen trade to Miami. They moved him to second base and they moved him to center field. So I mean, the ability to play all over, I think you're right. It's definitely valued now, but it still comes at the cost of maybe hurting offensive production. Very hard to quantify because it's going to be different probably from player to player and what kinds of reps they're going through and all sorts of different factors. But Jazz has been great around an injury again this year. I mean, you give this guy a full healthy season, Jed, I think 30 homers, especially in that ballpark, is within range. We've seen him run a ton since the Yankees acquired him, still really efficient on the base path too. I mean, 30-30, I think, is still ceiling within reach for Jazz Chisholm. And I think maybe honing in and having him at second also makes it easier for the Yankees to identify what they want to do at the trade deadline. Maybe they can go find a regular third base option to solve that problem. Let's get into our big picture topic, though, for today, Jed. We want to talk about some struggling hitters, and there's a variety of reasons why these guys just haven't quite done what the projections have expected or what we just expected based on their previous results. And I wanted to start the conversation with Royce Lewis. I think Royce Lewis might be an Occam's razor situation. The simplest explanation is the most likely explanation. It's a miserably unfortunate, poor track record. Like, 2 ACL tears. I mean, a quad strain on opening day in 2024. That cost him more than 2 months on the IL. He had a grade 2 adductor strain last July. That was 23 days on the IL. Spring training this year, left hamstring injury. June this year, hurt that left hamstring again. So he's missed more than 50 days on the IL with the same injury again this year. He's changed some things about his game, right? He's not going to steal bases, not going to take the extra risk from that. And what I've noticed is even though we have clear limitations in the value of sprint speed and how it's measured, to see the difference from Lewis these past 2 seasons versus the first 2 seasons he was in the big leagues when he was up in the 70th percentile in sprint speed, seeing him down in the 20s now gives you an idea that his legs are just different, or he's not able to use them the same way, at least running. But that makes me think that if there's that much of a gap, there's probably stuff that's different about how he's able to swing the bat too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that if you're just looking at bat speed, right, he's still, he's not qualified. So if you're looking at Savant, he's not qualified, but he's 73.5 miles an hour. He's still well above average in terms of bat speed. So it's still there. And, what I look at too is that squared up rate. And he's 31% squared up. And so, this is a guy who can make solid contact. His K rate is down. Let's see, his walk rate is up. And I look at really, what the struggles would be that I'm identifying is he's getting beat by the fastball. He's hitting 176 against the fastball right now versus you look at 2023 when he was, his most productive year, he was hitting 343 against the fastball. And then I look at another thing where his line drive rate is down 9% from 2023. He was almost 26% in 2023. He's down to 17% in 2025 on the batted ball profile. And it's a guy. I still think he can be highly productive. I just think that there's an approach that probably he needs to me get back to just driving baseballs as opposed to trying to lift some of these baseballs. And that's why I think he's getting beat by the fastball right now. And I think that's actually a theme with a lot of these young players. As I looked at it, is really like some of their production against fastballs. And if you're getting beat by the fastball, you're now you feel like you got to speed up to get to it. And then you leave yourself exposed to the off speed, particularly breaking stuff. As a righty, you're going to face right on right breaking balls a lot. And if you're cheating to get to the fastball, you're setting yourself up to get beat by breaking balls.
Yeah, it's a great breakdown, because I mean, you've seen some success at times against breaking balls too, and that really I mean, nothing's working right now for Royce Lewis, to be blunt. It's just been a kind of a lost year so far. He's hitting 215 with a 284 OBP, only slugging 306. That's the most surprising part, is you might have a dip in average in OBP, but to see the power fall off that much. And he was crushing fastballs before. I mean, the pulled air percentage was elite or very good previously, down at 15.5%. So it does seem like something's a little bit off. And if you look at something like Lewis, and you look at someone like Lewis, and you see bat speed that hasn't really fallen off, but you see struggles with the fastball, do you think that is more correctable than a situation in which bat speed has clearly been lost?
Yeah, I do. And that's why, I think that my last note is like, he still profiles as a guy who can be productive because of those underlying things. But he's got to stay healthy. And to me, like the pull air thing it's ideal, right? Like obviously you're going to do more damage pull in the air. But at the end of the day, if you go up there with that intent, pitchers can use that against you. And so I think we're at a point now where, and I, like I said, I'll go back to this line drive rate. The whole idea of like, Yogi Berra, keep it simple, stupid, right? Just hit the ball hard, right? Don't worry about trying to hit it pull in the air, hit the ball hard. And then good things happen when you hit it hard. And I think the line drive rate, and like I said, I'll go back to his 2023 year, a line drive rate of 26%. It simplifies the approach. And it's really hard to go up into the big leagues and decide that you're going to pull every ball in the air, because you're just going to expose yourself to so many other ways to get out.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I look at the projections for the rest of the season. You'll see like a 240 to 250 range for average, 310, 320 OBP, and then a kind of a normal amount of power of 450-ish slug at the higher end. That does seem attainable. And I think the encouraging thing, even though things have been going so poorly, it's only a 14.2% strikeout rate for Royce Lewis. He's never really had a strikeout problem in the big leagues, but to cut it down to that low, that gives you some hope that, there's some adjustments he's made that maybe will start to bear some fruit here in the second half of the season.
And the last point I'll make too on this is like, his chase rate is down, but his chase contact is actually up. And so that also that makes me think this is a guy that like, he feels a little beat. And so he's just trying, like almost like at this point, trying to put the ball in play. And so he's making weak contact out of the zone.
Like trying to avoid the mega slump by just making contact. And as a result of that is not doing damage, not finding the pitches you can drive and making opposing pitchers pay for it. I think that makes and then missing the pitches in the zone that he generally does damage on. Yeah. That's one thing I was starting to look at too before we started recording. I was looking at this entire group. We got 5 hitters we're going to break down today, and I was looking at Bobby Orr, not the Robert Orr on social if you want to find him. He's got his Seager metric, right? Looking at swing decisions. I'm like, well, who's making good swing decisions? Who's taking hittable pitches? Like what kinds of things are happening? Who's making contact in the zone at a high rate? Who's struggling to make contact in the zone consistently? And at least across the board, there's no like major red flag for Royce Lewis in terms of the swing decisions. So it's like maybe it's the 2-strike approach. Like maybe that's when he's chasing those pitches outside the zone, something a little bit smaller that's starting to sap that power, aside from, the health stuff that we talked about too. That's got to be a factor. But as he gets more comfortable post-second IL stint, maybe coming out of the All-Star break, we'll see a better version of Royce Lewis. Let's talk about Jordan Walker. I mean, go back to 2013 for a minute. Like this is the Jordan Walker I thought we were going to get for a long time. Like taking an inside fastball, homering off of Joe Ryan. This is like summer of 2023. Kodai Senga tries to go up and away against them above the top of the zone. Walker takes that out. The announcers, I had the Mets feed on when I cut that highlight, and they said he got it up in the jet stream in right center field. So maybe you can speak to that a little bit, having played there. But the interesting thing with Walker is that he did it with really good bat speed. He showed top end EV 50s right away, and he wasn't striking out a lot. a lot of the young players we see that have that kind of raw power come in with a 30+% K rate when they're getting to that power. And that doesn't describe Jordan Walker. So the most amazing thing here, Jordan Walker doesn't turn 24 until next May. Yeah. So there is still a lot of time for him to make some adjustments, but I'm kind of curious what you think has gone wrong since that impressive debut.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is a guy that, like you said, he's not even 24 yet. He's still a baby in all, in all aspects of, in all contexts, I should say. But here's a guy that, he's got this high bat speed with a low squared up rate, right? So you're talking, once again, not qualified, but 77 mile an hour bat speed, elite bat speed. Squared up rate is 17%. So he, the squared up rate, kind of like the smash factor in golf, like it's the ball speed based on the club head speed. And I think that squared up percent is 80% of the max, right? So he's only getting to the 80% of his max exit velocity based on the bat speed 17% of the time. And so I started looking at that when he's got high whiff, high K, high chase, and a low walk rate. Like to me, when I think about a guy that clearly has ability and the bat speed, I started looking at his stance, and when I started looking at the stance, I mean, here's a guy. It wasn't even the contact point, the intercept point. I mean, I think the intercept point is good. He's getting at 32 inches out in front of his out front of mass. But when I looked at it, he starts with this pretty open stance, and then at pitch release, he closes it about 10 inches. And then he opens it back up 6 inches at contact. And so that's a lot of movement, that he's kind of turning into it, then opening it back up. So there's a lot of rotation on the lower body on that swing that is creating it's almost away from the ball, like away from the field of play. Where, so if I'm Jordan Walker, I'm looking at the stance, I'm looking at how my load, I'm looking at how my timing of all this, and figuring out how I can better stay through the baseball. Because I think a lot of the whiff rate, K rate, chase rate is because there's a lot of momentum taking him away from the plate and away from the ball that causes a lot of swings that are in and out of the zone.
Yeah, I think you can really see that on the heat maps. I didn't show you this heat map before we started recording, but the interesting thing here is you can see with swinging strikes where he's been beat throughout his career. And the way you're describing his swing, I'm thinking, yeah, he'd be super vulnerable to anything down and away. And that is exactly where opposing pitchers get whiffs against Jordan Walker. They could beat him down and away. And when he was crushing the ball in 2023, I think it was mostly fastballs in that he was pounding for power, turning on those. That also makes sense based on the swing characteristics you were describing, because I think the way you describe Jordan Walker, it's almost like the bat head and the swing has momentum on the inner part of the plate. And for him to recover and to get out to the outer edge of the zone or to get down seems really, really difficult. And the wild thing with Jordan Walker is he's been trying to make adjustments the entire time he's been in the big leagues. I think every player is trying to make adjustments all the time. But what I think is really interesting with the bat tracking data and the stance data we have at Savant, if you split that out month by month over the course of his career, it's like a dance. Like he's just slowly moving. And the net result compared to when he broke in, or when we first got that data, at least in July of 2023, he's moved up in the batter's box 8 inches since then. And it's like this little progression all along the way. And his stance is a lot wider. At least it starts wider. It's like 6 inches wider than when it was when he broke in. So in a way, I kind of like that. Like I think it's better than doing the same thing and getting worse results. So it's kind of like trying to find it, trying to tweak it, trying to find the right series of adjustments. But yeah, and the follow-up here is like, how long does it take? We've seen so many players, sometimes it takes 3, 4, 5 seasons in the big leagues before they really kind of find that next level and sustain that for multiple years. I think in Anaheim, we're getting that from Joe Adell right now. Big time power, bat speed guy that maybe just because the run of playing time has been more consistent this year too. That's also helped him unlock a new sort of level. But are we a year away from a Jordan Walker breakout? Is it something we could see maybe in the second half? He's coming off of appendicitis, so once he comes back, that'll be a little bit of a timing thing for him to get comfortable again. But if we get a Jordan Walker breakout, how far into the future might we have to wait?
Yeah, I think given coming back from the the IL this year, and the type of adjustments that I would say that should be addressed with his stance and quite frankly, like the kinetic chain that he is displaying right now, it's probably next year at the earliest. But a guy that, man, I don't know at what point a fresh start is needed or some new voices are needed. But a guy that big can run, can produce bat speed. It's hard to give up on a guy like this. But like I said, I'd be working on that kinetic chain with him. Like I said, I think there's probably a lot of connection happening between the front shoulder and the front hip, and just with that stance, like I said, starting open, closing off, and then opening up, you're just creating a ton of momentum to create this rotational swing that is going to take the bat in and out of the zone, as opposed to creating more of the rotation from the lower body efficiently, where then you can just let the bat kind of go down the line. I didn't watch a lot of swings, but based on the results and the stance, I'm guessing that the front shoulder is following that front hip, and that contact point, his margin of error is minuscule, and which is why he's very exposed on the outside part of the plate.
Yeah, and I think it explains why we see the K rate go from 22.4%, which was great when he debuted in 2023, up to 28.1% last year, and now up to 33% this year. With pretty similar chase rates throughout that entire window. Like they've just found a way to exploit the swing deficiencies right now, Jordan Walker, even though he's got very intriguing raw tools. Let's move the focus over to Michael Harris.
Yeah.
Harris, I thought when he broke in from a statistical profile, like how he makes swing decisions, looked a little bit like a Bo Bichette type player or a Tim Anderson type player, where the hit tool was good and he could go get some pitches outside the zone. And some guys can get away with that for a long time. They've got good play coverage. They're just able to do that, and it's okay. And I thought, yeah, maybe by the time he's like 27 or 28, he'll be one of those guys that starts to decline a little earlier because of that approach, if he keeps that approach throughout his time in the big leagues. There's also the path of, while he broke in as a 21-year-old who flew through the minor leagues, that approach could change many times over the course of a career, and it still could. But Michael Harris is one of the biggest fallers in year-over-year slugging percentage. And each season he's been in the big leagues has been a little bit worse, but this has been probably the biggest drop year to year of anything we've seen. He's still a great defender in center field. That keeps the playing time afloat, keeps giving him opportunities. I don't think Atlanta's in any sort of position to do like a 3 or 4 week reset at AAA. That would probably not work right now. If there's going to be a major overhaul, that would probably be like an off-season sort of thing for Harris. But what do you think explains the drop-off in contact quality? Because Harris, even with that chase, had very high hard hit rates his first 3 years in the big leagues, 45% or higher every year. Barrel rate was about 10% over that 3-year span as well. And those numbers have dipped this year, and the chase has even ticked up a little bit more.
Yep. Well, I said this, when we were talking about Royce Lewis, the theme for, 3 of these guys is getting beat by fastballs. And you look at 2022, Michael Harris's WOBA against the fastball was 437. Then you go to 2023, WOBA down to 350. 2024 fastball WOBA 314. 2025 fastball WOBA 252. You just can't hit in the big leagues when you're getting beat by the fastball. And once again, it leads to this like downward spiral of poor performance, where now you're like, I'm getting beat by the fastball, so I'm gonna, I don't like it. And so I'm going to, start cheating to get to it. And that's when you get exposed to the off speed. So I'm looking at Michael Harris and I'm saying, you're you're getting beat at the fastball. Your squared up rate in 2023 was 28%. In 2025, we're down to 21%. Still guy with good bat speed. And he's always been a low walk rate and a high chase guy. But when you're getting beat by the fastball, the K rate and the whiff rate are up. That's what happens when you get beat by the fastball. So you have to hit off the fastball in the major leagues there. And I think this goes back to intent. I think that, he was probably feeling pretty good about himself after the first few years in the big leagues, and, was getting a lot of praise, and is like, I'm going to take that next step. I'm going to be more of a home run threat. Right. And, that's like, that's the thing about baseball and sometimes life is like, there's people that are just never satisfied. Right. And so I think, and that's a good thing, but I think in this case, I think it's working against Michael because he's just trying a little bit too hard. I'll go back to the line drives. The line drive rate is down 4%. I think it's the classic case of just, hey, I've been really productive the first few years of my career. It's time for me to take that quote unquote next step and start trying to drive balls more, hit the ball in the air more. And you look at I was looking at the batted ball profile too. He's topping more balls, which means, to me, he's trying to pull air and missing out front more and topping balls, rolling over him, because that approach is he's trying to dictate the result before he's even recognized the pitch.
So I don't talk about this particular run value leaderboard very often. I happen to notice it on Harris's page because it kind of just stands out, but they have the StatCast batting run value, and they break out your value by part of the zone. So in the heart of the zone, the shadow zone, which is around the edges, chase, where you really shouldn't be, swinging, and then waste, which if you're swinging at that, something has gone terribly wrong, right? So Harris is a -8 in the heart of the zone. And previously, with rookie year, +4, 2023, 0, last year even +2, like -19 in the shadow, easily the worst of his career. And he's even -2 in chase. Like that. Those are just indicators to me that something is broken. Yes, whether it's what he's trying to do or being caught between approaches. I don't know if there's any sort of injury that hasn't been reported on there, or don't even know what kind of instruction he's been getting. Right? What are the hitting coaches telling him right now? What was he trying to do in the offseason? Like they're missing puzzle pieces there, but it's weird to see someone play that well upon arrival and to tumble this way so quickly in their career.
Well, and once again, I'm just going to go back to the fastball. Like we're on Son Savant here with run values by pitch type. You go back to the four-seam fastball in 2022, he's got a run value of 10 off the four-seam fastball. 2025, he's -10. Right. And that's 352 four-seam fastballs in 2025 versus 543 in 2022. You just the hitting off of the fastball establishes everything in the major leagues. And that to me is the perfect indicator of, where he is at, is that he is just flat out getting beat. And I think a lot of that it's not for a lack of talent. It's not for a lack of, ability to hit at the big league level. It is pure intent on what you're trying to do at the plate. And when you're going up there and you're saying, I'm going to do this, that, or the other, it becomes really hard over the course of the season, as opposed to just, taking that keep it simple, stupid approach and hit the ball hard. Because at the end of the day, that's what you control.
So we talk a lot about pitchers adding more fastballs to have those extra wrinkles. And I wonder if we're starting to see this playing out on the hitting side. We're seeing the downside of it. Guys that did not have problems with fastballs previously having more problems as they see different variations more often. It's not like Michael Harris sees more four-seamers. He sees less four-seamers now than ever before. But what he sees is a lot more sinkers. And as the league continues to have more pitchers that throw multiple fastballs, I wonder if that's what we're going to see break down and cause some of these sort of surprising trajectories for guys that come in, handle fastballs fine, and now they don't. I mean, the next group of players coming to the big leagues will probably see more pitchers coming up that have multiple fastballs all along. So it's an adjustment they might have already made. But I think this is a newer sort of adjustment, or at least a very era specific sort of adjustment that a bunch of these guys are going through.
Yeah, I'll just point back to 2022 sinker. He's had 253 sinkers, according to Statcast in 2022, and had a run value of 3. Hit 280 with a slug of 547 against sinkers, right? And so a sinker is a perfect example of, and you go back to this 4%, topped balls being up 4%. If he is trying to elevate sinkers that are, thigh high or below, he's going to roll over a ton of balls, right? And so that's where it goes back to intent. This guy has the ability to take that sinker down in the zone and hit line drives, hit it hard back up the middle or the other way. Because if you start trying to roll over that ball, get it in the air, that's the whole point of the sinker, right? The whole point of the sinker is for the hitter to recognize fastball and try to elevate it. And guess what? It's a little slower with a little more depth to it. And at the end of the day, the contact point becomes a little further out front where the hands have started to roll over, and it leads to the topped ball.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested to see if he can make an adjustment on the fly this season, or if we see it maybe more in 2026, but there's just too much talent here for Harris to kind of bottom out at this sort of progression. I think the rundown comp I threw at you was like, is he going to turn into more of like a Harrison Bader or a Michael Taylor type center fielder where people keep looking and saying, there's got to be more there. There's got to be more there. And then it just doesn't quite happen on the offensive side. It would be a strange progression, but we've seen stranger things, I guess, in the game over the years. Let's talk about Oneil Cruz, Jed. He's actually going to be a part of the home run derby field. We just learned that in the last 24 hours or so. I was trying to find what's causing Oneil Cruz to strike out nearly 33% of the time, and why is he underperforming on balls in play? I really couldn't come up with anything. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's on a 32 homer, 56 steal pace. If you want to go for 162 games, I don't know what else you're asking for power and speed. We know the tools are off the charts, and he seems like the kind of player that wouldn't run a low BABIP given the extreme quality of contact that he makes and that he's a great runner. Like, those two things should generally keep your BABIP up a little bit. So I came away looking at Oneil Cruz saying, man, if there's a guy that I want to trade for in a fantasy league right now that could have maybe an MVP sort of second half because of all the things he can do, I think Cruz is that guy. And I think some of us have wondered, if the Pirates start making some bigger picture decisions with their roster, is Cruz the kind of player they would actually consider trading? I mean, they have a hard time developing bats, so it's counterintuitive in that regard, but it just doesn't seem like the ideal fit has been found for his glove. I see a lot of highlights of him in center field where something is just a little bit off. Maybe it's just still learning on the job. Tough place to go after playing shortstop, your whole life. But what do you make of Oneil Cruz? Because I came away still looking at him as a guy that can reach at least one more level.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I'll go back once again, like all these guys, like fastballs, right? Like you look at 2024, you look at 2020, 2023, there was a little bit of a dip. Like if we're looking at run value, he's at 0 run value off the four-seam fastball right now. He's hitting 200 with a WOBA of 365. I just, it's really hard to be productive at the big league level. I'll say it again, when you're not hitting out the fastball. You look at 2024 run value of 10 off the four-seam fastball. And this is a guy, fastest bat speed in the game. 100th percentile. We know that. But then you talk about the squared up rate at 21. He's in the 14th percentile for squared up rate. And then when you add that to the fact that he's K'ing at 33%, and he's in the 91st percentile for walk. He's walking 13% of the time. So it's not a pitch recognition thing. You're not walking that amount of time unless you have, some sort of pitch recognition ability. So I'm just gonna, go back to, like, there is no way that this guy should be striking out 33% of the time with the speed that he possesses, with the bat speed that he possesses. It's really fun to watch him hit balls into the river at PNC. But at the end of the day, if you're hitting 200 and you're on base, and like I said, even on base at 314, like the OPS isn't terrible. It's just there's so much more there with the bat speed and the sprint speed that it just feels like a travesty that he's striking out at 33% of the time when there's probably a half a gear down on the bat speed that allows him to square more balls up. I'm not talking about putting balls in play. I'm just talking about squaring balls up more. There's just no way that a guy that with that bat speed should be squaring up balls, in the 14th percentile.
So there's a great piece at Fangraphs. Michael Rosen wrote it after actually our Monday episode. He kind of cited Eno and I talking about Riley Green and how bizarre it is for guys that are high in barrel rate to be low in squared up. And it's the efficiency of the contact you're making, right? And I think
exactly
there is something about higher end bat speed guys probably being less efficient because you can get away with it. You can still get an okay result when you swing the bat that fast. But if you can take a little off and square it up more often, Oneil Cruz would be in the first player you could say he could probably take a little off and he'd still have plenty of bat speed. And that might really serve him well because the flaw, the thing that would hold him back from that MVP level second half or that next level and turning himself into more than a slightly above average hitter by WRC plus is the zone contact percentage. Oneil Cruz is in the 5th percentile in zone contact percentage.
Exactly.
And I think if pitchers can go in the zone and get whiffs that often, that's going to hold you back. Like as he's approaching everything right now, this feels like the best sort of result in terms of the power and the speed. And again, I think the average, it's not a 203 true talent average, but I think he could underperform expectations in that category, in that stat, as a result of being so beatable on pitches that would be called strikes. I mean, that's the brutal part of this. I remain optimistic. I guess I'm not necessarily convinced that it's going to happen in Pittsburgh, though. This might be a change of scenery situation where new coaches, new teammates might be the path to Oneil Cruz kind of making those sorts of adjustments. And we hear stories like this all the time. Will Salmon wrote one about the next player we're going to talk about. Francisco Alvarez had JD Martinez as a teammate last year and wanted to follow through on some of the off-season work that JD recommended. I think he changed his hitting coach and kind of revamped everything. And it just makes me wonder, is he caught between approaches? Because this season has led to a Francisco Alvarez demotion to AAA. Age to level power has always been impressive everywhere he's been. Anytime we had StatCast measurements on the top end velocities that he was generating, super impressive. And he got to the power right away in the big leagues. And I'm going to guess, just based on the theme of the show, that there might be some problems with the fastball here, Jed.
You guessed it. Here's a guy that, fastball WOBA 2024, 384, 2025, 295. And you go back to 2023, 413 fastballs seen with a 458 WOBA and a run value of 10, right? 2025 four-seamer, -2. And so just and then you're talking about a whiff rate too in 2024 of 24.7% and in 2025 33%. So you're talking about a guy who is getting beat by the fastball and swinging and missing way more. And the chase rate is getting higher. He's getting beat by the fastball again, and he's starting to cheat. And so, he doesn't like getting beat by the fastball. And now as soon as they start seeing him cheat to the fastball, that's when they start spinning it on him.
I think he's still a long-term buy low because part of the story with Alvarez has been a couple of injuries, a thumb injury. I think it was last year. And I think about that as being something that would make things very difficult as a hitter. I think being a catcher with a thumb injury maybe is like the worst thing you could be as a position player. Like, it seems very easy to aggravate thumb problems when you're back there. And there's still so much time for him to make these adjustments. I think the fact that he was even trying to be a more balanced hitter in the first place, I think that's generally a good thing. Like knowing that you don't want to be one note. You don't want to try to pull everything in the air when you have that much raw power, because you could use the whole field and be more dynamic and be a guy that pushes your average into the 250, 260 range, and your OBP gets into the 330 range instead of the high 200, low 300 range. Like that's that's the possibility here that he was trying to unlock. And I think those kinds of adjustments just take time. And I think you have to stretch that timetable out even further when IL stints become part of the equation.
There's no doubt. And to your point, like hands with position players, thumbs in particular. And you're talking, to your point, you're talking about a 23-year-old who has seen some success. And, I'm not saying that the adjustments he made were bad, because I think that being a more balanced hitter is ideal, right? Like you want to give your team an opportunity to produce a run, whether you're scoring or you're driving in that run, every opportunity that you can. But I'm just going to go back to the fastball. Like you can't be an effective major league hitter getting beat by the fastball.
Yeah. I think the reasons why guys are getting beat by fastballs are probably more complicated than they used to be. 5+ years ago, if I saw someone handling fastballs well, I was like, good, they can handle the fastball. Don't worry about it until they age. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think the league changes so quickly that there are ways that things you have solved can quickly become things that you have to solve again. But the funny thing about Alvarez, Jed, if you told me when he broke in a couple of years ago, you said there's going to be a catcher. He's going to hit 50 home runs in a season. I'd be like, that's wild. I guess Francisco Alvarez would be the catcher I'd pick, given his age and how hard he hits the ball. And of course, it's probably going to be Cal Raleigh. But that's how quickly things can change year to year, expectation-wise with guys. And of the guys we've talked about, of this group of 5 hitters, who are you most optimistic about, short-term and long-term? Who do you think ends up reaching the higher end outcomes of what people have expected for them?
Yeah, it's hard not to like of this group. It's hard not to like Oneil Cruz, just based on the K rate being so high, and what I don't think that's who he is as a player. I just think that he appears, the bats that I've seen from him, he has the ability to put the ball in play. I just think it's a matter of what you prioritize and what your intent is. So I do like Oneil Cruz, I like Michael Harris too. There's a couple years of really substantial production that, and quite frankly, like he's stayed healthy in those, in bulk years. So we know from a workload perspective, he can handle it. There might be some one-off things here and there that he's going to have to deal with, but just as like a general body of work, I think that he's a guy that I do like going forward, because I think that if he can just get back to a simpler approach where I think the evolution of a lot of these players too is figuring out who you are as a player. And I think the biggest takeaway, if I'm Michael Harris, is, hey, maybe I'm not the 40 home run guy, and maybe it's okay to be a 15 to 20 home run guy that hits the ball hard a lot, right? And gets a lot of base hits. I think that's a valuable player. And so if I'm Michael Harris, I'm looking at this year and I'm saying, okay, what I learned more than anything else is who I am not as a player, as opposed to who I am.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We'll see how he goes into the offseason as far as the mentality, or how he goes into the second half. There's still time to still rewrite the 2025 chapter a little bit, at least finish the ending on a high note. I'm with you, I think, on the top of that list. Like, Cruz just jumps off the page to me as the guy that I still believe in the most. I also got to factor in, like, he might be a little older than the rest of the group, but he also lost nearly a full season to a major injury. So I think the experience at the big leagues age versus, the actual age, like, there's about a year in terms of number of plate appearances he should have by this point. And I think Francisco Alvarez still just jumps for me. I mean, I think the defense looked really good a couple of years ago too. That facet of his game shouldn't erode as quickly as it has. I think there's a few ways he could become a really big piece for the Mets, even in the second half of this season. We'll see how that reboot goes for him at AAA. Real quick, Jed, one last question before we go. Since you played in it, does the All-Star game need a tweak? Is it okay as is? Britt and I talked about first-time All-Stars yesterday. I think that's one of the coolest things about the game as it is right now, getting that opportunity, for a lot of guys, it's like a crowning achievement on an individual level to play in the game. I've kind of admitted as a media person, it's like, I don't really know what purpose the All-Star game has in my life beyond the good stories. Like, it's just sort of a fun celebration of baseball. But some people have suggested maybe playing it like banana ball style. I mean, you got players mic'd up already, and they do some more interesting things with it now than they used to. I think it's good that it doesn't count for home field advantage in the World Series. That was a silly thing. I'm glad we've moved past that. But does the All-Star game need a tweak, or is it just fine the way that it is?
Yeah, that's a I go back and forth on this one because, to your point, it is an exhibition, but maybe there's an opportunity because I think the way that the game, it's almost like a spring training game, right? Where you get the fan vote, starters who they want to see, they're out of the game by the fourth inning, fifth inning probably at the most. Maybe there's an opportunity to create, maybe this is the whole golden at bat idea, right? Where you bring in the guy and in later in the innings where you can kind of force the matchup that everybody wants to see late in the game. So maybe this is the perfect implementation for the golden at bat.
It's a really good way to think about it. I mean, you could have, let's say, Mason Miller's in the game. NL is at the bottom of their lineup, still a good player, but they could just say, we're sending Shohei up there against Mason Miller because that's what we want to see. We want to put the highest octane combination out there. Yep. I'd be for that. Any small tweaks like that. I mean, because it's an entertainment product. I mean, baseball always is, but the All-Star game in particular is purely for entertainment. It should be fun. It should be laid back. I mean, I think of the games that people bring up a lot, like the NHL All-Star game, NBA, the Pro Bowl is just, the Pro Bowl has just withered into completely unwatchable status. But
truly,
I think it's very hard to play All-Star games in any sport because you want to care and you want to play and have fun, but you can't go the same way you go for a game that counts because it's an exhibition. There's a limiting factor there. Because of that limiting factor, I think you just have to present it differently and maybe make some fun changes like the one you outlined. Golden at bat, great call.
Yeah, and I will. The other one that I've thought would be fun is there's the pitch hit and run competition that kids do, and if there was an opportunity to have some of the guys participate in like a pitch hit run type situation, you don't want to put guys in danger, like of hurting hamstrings or anything like that by sprinting. But if there's some sort of format that some of these kids that are participating in pitch hit run can see the major leaguers doing as well, in that format, that might be a fun addition. But the game in particular, I think the golden bat.
I think my recurring plea for All-Star Week is now twofold. One, let the Futures game be 9 innings. Just put a few more pitchers on the roster. Play it a little later in the evening too. I think it starts usually like 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon. Like showcase that a little bit more. I think it's good to get future big leaguers in front of people sooner whenever possible. And my other plea is more of like a player development sort of thing. I think the draft being attached to All-Star Week is not great. I mean, you have high school seasons end in June, college season ends in June. You get this kind of funny window. Like, what are guys who are being drafted this weekend? What have they been doing for the last couple of weeks? Not that it turns into a really long season if you get drafted in June and you keep playing and you were playing since January and you play all the way into September. But I know there have been changes to short season leagues that used to be there that aren't there. Do you think it makes sense to just move the draft back up to June and to get players into their big league organizations and to get their career started a little sooner instead of having this lag?
Yeah, I guess that depends on like the signing deadline then too, like if and I get it from this is kind of one of the crown jewel events in turn, like All-Star Week for Major League Baseball. And if you can, you're getting your next wave of players, to your point on the Futures game, if you're getting them on the stage at the All-Star game, I mean, the production value, I've been to the last couple of drafts, the production value of this, like getting guys, to go up there and put the uniform on national TV and kind of make a spectacle out of it and make it that, try to make it as entertaining as you can. I think there's value in that. So and it would be hard to recreate that in, a random week in June.
Yeah, I guess that was the probably part of the league's thinking in trying to bunch it all together. I know there are folks that work in organizations that liked it the way it was, because they had the All-Star break when you focused on the amateur side could actually be your in-season break, which basically doesn't exist otherwise. But we'll see. We'll see if the powers that be make any sorts of changes there. I mean, it's tough that because of the proximity, and the proximity of the big leagues is changing. We're seeing teams draft a lot more college players moving faster. That eventually could make the event a little easier for a casual fan to jump into and get excited about too. Because if it's only a year and a half, I mean, think about some of the guys we're seeing in the big leagues right now. Nick Kurtz was drafted last summer. Like, that's a quick path. And there's a bunch of other guys that are doing it. Christian Moore last summer. That's less than a year already making an impact. We are going to go on our way out the door. A reminder, you can join our Discord with the link in the show description. Be sure to leave us a nice rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or hit the like button if you're watching us on YouTube. If you want to follow Jed on social, you got to find him on Instagram. I'm on Bluesky, dvr.bsky.social. Thanks to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. That's going to do it for this episode of Rated Barrels. We're back with you on Thursday.
Thanks.